Hello there, I'm the Biblical Translator, and I am here today to talk about Mark 13. And I'll read just the first couple of verses, and then I'll explain what my take is on it. As Jesus was leaving the temple that day, one of the disciples said, "Teacher, look at these magnificent buildings. Look at the precious stones within the walls." Jesus replied, "Yes. Look at these great buildings, but they will be completely demolished. Not one stone will be left on top of the other." And I thought of places like Buckingham Palace and Madame Tussauds and the art museums, buildings that are held in high esteem. They're revered, and I thought of the cemeteries where loved ones frequent and they hold it sacred. Like I went to see my mother today at the cemetery, and I was looking at all the beautiful stones. My mother's coffin was made out of granite, and I'm like, wow. And I thought about if there was a civil war, how places like Buckingham Palace and the Madame Tussauds and the cemeteries that are revered could just be demolished, one stone on top of the other, because nothing is permanent. "When will this happen?" asked a few disciples, and Jesus explained about the wars and the earthquakes and the famines. And I thought about the current wars that are in Russia, Ukraine, Sudan and Somalia. I thought about the earthquakes in Puerto Rico, Chile, Peru and the Philippines. And then there are the famines in Afghanistan, North Nigeria, South Sudan and other places. And yet the end is still not near, Jesus says. These are mere birth pains, what we call Braxton Hicks, and as women we call contractions. And unless you're a woman, you will not know how painful those contractions are before you give birth. And that is what these are. They're just mere warning signs that giving birth, instead of a child, it's giving a birth to calamity. He talks about we're going to be victimized, we're going to be persecuted, we're going to be treated cruelly, and yet through all of this we must acknowledge God. We must have faith in God. Family members will betray each other to save their own skin. Children will turn against parents, and parents will turn against children. We heard about the four-year-old who was stabbed by a 41-year-old woman in Hackney recently. We are told it's best that it's not winter and that we're not pregnant, so you can imagine if we're all hauled out of our houses and it's winter and it's cold and it's dark, or pregnant women who have a heavy load to carry on top of everything else. You can imagine how traumatic that's going to be. And he says no one will survive unless God has mercy, and he may only show mercy on his chosen ones. And even then they're still going to go through all of this persecution, victimization and torment, but it won't be for as long as those who are not chosen. So no one will escape. They will feel the impact, but it will be shorter. And he says you can't stop and pack. You have to be ready to go. And that reminds me of the fire alarm at work. They say we can't stop and pick up our bags, we can't pick up our phones, we must just leave immediately. And yet how many of us think, okay, I have to go and grab my phone, I have to go and grab my bag because it's got my keys in it, I need to be able to get in my car, I need to be able to get in my home. So they go back for their bags. But if they go back in this particular time, they will not survive. But it's interesting because if they go back, he's saying that no one will survive, but he's saying no one will survive anyway. So whether you go for your bag and your keys and whatever it is you think is important, if you're not going to survive anyway, you might as well have the consolation of going back and getting your keys and your bag, unless of course you're one of the chosen ones, and you may escape this wrath and all of this turmoil and all of this torment and pain. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Because as we, each day it just shows us how nothing is forever. We know nothing is forever. We know that our end is imminent. It's guaranteed. That's one thing about life. Death is guaranteed. It's how we die which is the scary part. I always say I want to die peacefully in my sleep. But some people, they die through murder, they can die through illness, they can die by a car accident, they can die through suicide, they can die in so many different ways. Some people, they go on to the amusement park and they just have the wheel just happens to break down and they get killed in that way. Some people go on a boat trip and the boat capsizes and they end up drowning. Some people, like we know, they die in earthquakes, floods, famines, wars. So many different ways to die, and it's guaranteed that we are going to die. And what this is telling us, it's just reminding us that we mustn't revere all of these beautiful buildings, all of these beautiful stones, what the rich hold so dear and so precious, because at some point they will be demolished. There will be nothing left. You can hoard up all the gold you want, hoard up all the bitcoins you want, hoard up everything you want, but if there is a war, what use is it? If all the vaults around the world are blown up, everyone will be equal. No one will have any more than the other. And I often wonder about that. How do people continue to be rich despite the wars? Because we've had a history of wars, haven't we? So how do we still end up with that rich 1% each time if everything is wiped out? Obviously, everything cannot be wiped out. Obviously, the rich have obviously put their money or their wealth somewhere where it is safe. Safe from wars, safe from any kind of criminal activities, safe from any kind of turbulence and turmoil. So there's obviously a way that they secure their wealth so that, all things being equal, the whole world, is destroyed, so to speak. How does that 1% still remain? Over all of these years, and we've had wars, we've had everything, but like you said, wars seem to only impact the poor. When they're throwing bombs, they never throw bombs on the rich people's houses for some reason. They throw bombs on the poor people's houses in the poor neighborhoods. And you have to ask yourself, is that by design? How come these people who are so angry at another country still manage to protect the rich and only target the poor to kill and to destroy and make their lives worse than they were already? When you see these news items, it's always the poor who are struggling, and the rich are still somewhere talking about the news, talking about what's going on. So all I'm saying is that, this isn't a fantastic way to end the year, but it is about being prepared. The new year is coming. We do not know what is happening. We do not know what is in store for us. So we need to be prepared. We need to make sure we have enough food, because we can see that the famine is starting. We can see that food supplies are diminishing. And so we just have to be prepared and keep yourself safe and pray for your security and your safety, and at least a peaceful death when it comes.